Ninja Gaiden 2 Black just shadow dropped, and along with it comes the opportunity for a whole new crowd to experience the brutal difficulty of Ninja Gaiden for the first time. If that's you, and this is, in fact, your first go around with this timeless classic, chances are probably high that you're going to be looking for some combat tips to help you on your ninja way. Well, strap on your kunai because here are 10 essential combat tips for Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. One of the most vital techniques that you need to learn in Ninja Gaiden 2 is the ability to instantly go into your ultimate technique charging stance by jumping and holding the strong attack button right as you hit the ground. If you do it correctly, you'll cancel the start animation of your ultimate technique and immediately start sucking in nearby essence, allowing you to get level 1 and level 2 ultimate techniques off very quickly. These can often kill multiple enemies in one go, and you're invulnerable during the duration of the animation, making them insanely powerful. You're also highly encouraged to use them because when you suck up essence and land an ultimate technique, the essence that gets dropped from enemies killed by it will be increased. As fast as they are though, they're not instant, so be aware that you can get knocked out of them, even after you absorb essence, which essentially wastes it. To combat this, try doing quick charges after throwing shurikens or hopping off an enemy head. That tiny bit of stun these techniques offer is usually enough to give you the time that you need to get an ultimate technique off. Another essential tip regarding ultimate techniques is that if you hold down the block button, you will not suck up any essence. You can't run or walk while holding down block, but you can dodge, jump out of the dodge, and then dodge again. This is basically called a roll jump, and it is a super important movement technique as it keeps you moving and allows you to reposition yourself while holding the block button so you can use an ultimate technique in a spot where it will connect with an enemy. Also note that for a level 2 ultimate technique, you'll need 2 yellow essences, or 1 blue or 1 red essence. The Flying Swallow, performed by jumping towards an enemy and pressing the heavy attack button, is an incredibly powerful technique that can occasionally decapitate an enemy in one hit. And even if it doesn't kill an enemy outright, it will still damage them and put you in a position to go on the offensive. As such, you should definitely use it, especially on normal difficulty, where it's basically a god move that can get you out of a ton of trouble. But be aware that this is kind of a crutch, and if you don't learn how to play the game beyond just pressing jump forward and heavy attack, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble when all of a sudden it doesn't work on a certain enemy or boss. It also is far less effective on harder difficulties and can get you killed if you rely on it too much. It's not as sexy as the Flying Swallow, but the Guillotine Throw, performed by jumping towards a normal-sized bipedal enemy and pressing both jump and light attack at the same time, is a hugely underrated part of Ryu's arsenal. It's unblockable, keeps you mobile and hard to hit, does great damage, and if you throw an enemy into the wall, it can instantly kill or at the very least delim an enemy, much like the Flying Swallow can. Like everything in Ninja Gaiden 2, don't spam it, but keep it as a tool in your arsenal and you'll get a lot of mileage out of it. Another one of Ryu's most important moves is his iconic Izuna Drop, performed with the Dragon Sword by pressing light, heavy, light, 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 heavy. This move will almost always kill an enemy in one go, while also doing a bunch of splash damage wherever you land. It's hands down one of Ryu's best techniques, and always something that you should be looking to land. However, there are a few things to note about it. Number 1, if there are a lot of projectile-wielding enemies in the area, you will often get knocked out of the combo before the throw can land. Most, if not all, weapons have an Izuna Drop-like move, but not all of them have the same input, and most are not unlocked at the first level of the weapon. The Izuna Drop for the Lunar Staff, for example, requires the weapon to be upgraded to level 2, and is done by pressing light, forward light, heavy, light, light, heavy. Make sure to check the command list for whatever weapon you're using, and make sure that you know how to perform the Izuna Drop, or the Izuna Drop equivalent for that weapon. One of the key aspects of Ninja Gaiden 2's gameplay has to do with the dismemberment of enemies. When an enemy loses an arm or a leg, they will still attempt to fight you. And in fact, they'll even become more dangerous, thanks to new unblockable suicide grabs that deal tons of damage. On the bright side, when an enemy is dismembered, you can kill them instantly by pressing heavy attack next to them. This is called an Obliteration Technique. If you're careful, keeping a delimbed enemy around can actually be helpful, They're not as mobile, so you won't have to worry about them being all up in your face, and they essentially fill up an on-screen enemy slot because Ninja Gaiden 2 is designed so that there can only be 5 enemies active at once. Just keep an eye on them and make sure that they don't sneak up on you because those grabs hurt. Shurikens can be used in the air to pepper and interrupt enemies, but you can also use them to cancel lengthy recovery animations on certain combos with certain weapons. One really great use for this is the Dragon Sword's light, light, heavy combo. This is especially helpful against larger enemies that can't be Izuna Drop, as the heavy attack can delimb, giving you a very quick opportunity for an Obliteration Technique without any unneeded strikes. You can perform a counterattack with any of your weapons by holding block and pressing either the light or strong attack buttons right before an enemy hits you. Counters are great at dismembering enemies, and it's usually a good idea to be ready to perform an Obliteration Technique on an enemy right after landing a counter. That said, Ninja Gaiden 2 is not Sekiro, and you shouldn't rely too heavily on counters. Enemies in this game will eventually wise up to your technique and will grab you out of your blocking stance, doing huge damage with their throws. Again, it's a good weapon to have in your arsenal, but make sure not to overuse it. Don't be afraid to use your Ninpo. Yeah, it sucks to not have it when you really need it, but that's what Devil's Way mushrooms are for. Ninpos should always be used as your get out of jail free card. If you're overwhelmed with enemies, or when one enemy in particular is giving you a tough time, go ahead and use it. As for what Ninpo to upgrade, generally I would say that Inferno is the best to have against bosses, while Windblades are best against a group of regular enemies. Choose one of those two and focus on maxing them out with your Jewels of the Demon Seal, and then focus on the other. When you upgrade your weapon, try out your new moves. Take note especially of what moves are good at dismembering foes, techniques that hit multiple enemies at once, and moves that allow you to stay mobile. You don't have to use different weapons, and in fact, if you want, you can just stick with the Dragon Sword and save all your essence for purchasing items at the shop, but every weapon does have its strengths and weaknesses, and if you find yourself struggling with a particular encounter, you may find surprising success by switching up your weapon. The key to surviving in Ninja Gaiden 2 is to never be a stationary target. Enemies are incredibly aggressive in this game, and if you're not constantly jumping, rolling, wall running, or bouncing off enemy heads anytime you're not swinging your weapon, you're going to get hit. Always try to favor moves that move you forward. Flying Swallow is obviously a great choice as we've mentioned above, but also look for things like the Dragon Sword's forward light combo strings. These combos are great at keeping Ryu moving while still being offensive. Finally, let's just go through some rapid-fire small tips that don't really warrant a full point, but are still good to know regardless. Use the right bumper to center the camera. Often you'll need to very quickly adjust the camera, and moving the right stick just isn't fast enough. In moments like these, press the right shoulder button to instantly center the camera behind Ryu. And this is a simple one, but block. It should go without saying, but blocking is super important in Ninja Gaiden 2. As we've mentioned before, don't do it all the time because you'll get grabbed, but if you're in the middle of a flurry of attacks, block until the attacks stop, and then dodge out of the way. Range combat. Don't neglect your ranged weapons, especially against ranged foes. Make sure to jump and use auto-aim with the bow to stay mobile while still firing, and hold left-triggered manually aim, which is much slower, but will do much more damage. And those are our essential combat tips for Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. Thanks for watching, and for everything else, keep it here.